Good. So we're here, and yes, hello everybody. Cool. So we have some things to celebrate. We have some things to talk about. I have some plans to share, and I have a little lesson to share, I hope. I have a little bit of smack to talk. You know, we're going to do all the things that we do here at Archaeology with Flint Dibble. Some good archaeology, some good drama, some good fun. I'm from Philadelphia. Anybody from Philly? Let's rock on Phils. Though I'm here in Cardiff, of course, in Wales. Okay, let's have some fun. Thank you. Yes, my birthday is actually tomorrow. So we have some cool stuff. I'm going to do a little spiel later on about patterns, not discoveries, because that is what archaeology today is really about. And I hope we can have a little chat about that and all those kind of things. And only left channel for me. I'm not sure what you mean, Bag of Cats. You mean just the audio's left channel. Is it not on stereo? It should be. Yeah, go Eagles, exactly. So, okay, so yeah, we'll talk a little bit about patterns, not discoveries. We are celebrating a couple of milestones here and what we're going to do for the future with this channel. We have crossed 50,000 subs. Thank you all for subscribing. Yeah, we couldn't do this without all of you. That would be kind of pointless, right? I'd just be talking to myself. But we also just crossed 2 million views. I don't think it shows that publicly, but in my private stats, I meant to screenshot it. It shows that we have now 2 million views. And yeah, I'm turning 24 today. So yeah, that's pretty awesome. So look, 50,000 of you. It's just, what is wrong with this? It's just kind of nuts how many people end up on the internet. Like, it's absolutely insane. You know that the population of ancient Pompeii is estimated to be like 20 to 25,000 people, you know? And so it's just nuts that there are more people that watch me and that subscribe to me than lived in this vibrant ancient city, which if you missed my video on Pompeii, I have more coming soon. We did a trip there last year. And so there's a lot of content coming over the next several months on Pompeii. But there's more of you than lived in an entire Roman city, twice as many of you than lived in an entire Roman city. And that just boggles my mind to think about how we leverage the internet. And I mean, you know, in many ways, that's actually my goal here, of course, is to try to leverage this internet and to try to share archaeology and scholarship and what we actually do as widely as possible. What I've learned from just even speaking into small audiences is that that people really like archaeology. And what I've also learned is that people don't always know what archaeology these days is. And so that's really my goal with this channel, is to try to share that kind of stuff. So we have some really fun stuff coming up. Obviously, it's all hashtag real archaeology. Friday, I'm still clearing the scheduling, but I'm hoping Friday at 1 p.m. UK. So that would be early. It would be 8 a.m. Eastern. The time might shift. I'm hoping to have a discussion about the new machine learning discoveries from the Herculaneum papyri with Professor Michael McCosker from the University College London, but we're still clearing this. If it doesn't happen right now, we'll do it later. But I think that would be a lot of fun. Sunday, if you were not here for the Real Archaeology live streams, we're going to re-release some of that content. So I'm going to re-release the conversation that I had with Dr. Hannah Moots about ancient Roman DNA. I think that in those big, long live streams, those conversations got buried and people are not watching them. So I really want to make sure to re-release all those. So you're going to see a few re-releases. If you've already seen the Real Archaeology material, well, then you can share it, but skip watching it again unless you want to. Next Monday, I am going to be going on R.M. Brown's channel. He is the one that has created my theme song. Hi, my name is Flint, and I'm an archaeologist. Rhymes and riddles, tickle, tickle, giggles. Yes, I get to finally meet RM. Rhymes and riddles, tickle, tickle, giggles. Tickle, tickle, giggles. So yeah, the internet is a wild place. It feels very strange to be dancing to a song that's just my name on repeat, but whatever, like it's all in good fun. But so RM Brown has a pretty cool YouTube channel, and I'll be on there to chat with him about archaeology and pseudo-archaeology and pseudoscience and all the kind of things that I normally talk about on Monday. Let's see, next Wednesday, I'm going to have Dr. Hugh Thomas on at the University of Sydney. So it's going to have to be an early day one. I think it's, again, 1 p.m. UK. So what is that, 8 a.m. in the East Coast time, but we'll have it recorded, of course. And he directs a survey in the deserts of Saudi Arabia, cataloging thousands of archaeological sites, getting there by helicopter and mapping them out by drone. So we're going to be talking about that on Wednesday. And then next Friday, Professor Ken Fader has released a new edition of his books, Archaeology, Frauds, what is it? Frauds, Myths, and I forget the full name of it. But either way, we're going to be talking about that book, and we're going to be talking about archaeological frauds, which I think will be really exciting because Kenny is he's awesome. A few other updates this weekend for all my patrons on Patreon. Join now. We're going to open up a Discord server for all my Patreons. I'm also going to look into how to do that for my YouTube channel members. But I'm going to start experimentally first with the patrons because Patreon takes a lot less of a cut out of the money that you spend to support me than YouTube memberships do. So I encourage people to sign up on Patreon if you want to have more direct access to conversations about archaeology in the news and the media and discussions about what's coming up on this channel as well. I've recently expanded to Spotify. So if you prefer to watch or listen to my videos on Spotify, that's now going to be available. We're working on porting over all of our old content to Spotify, and all the new content will be posted on Spotify. Usually the live streams will show up there a day or two afterwards. It depends how long YouTube takes to process the live stream. Did I say frogs? I didn't say frogs. What are you guys talking about in the chat? And then the week after, I have a couple really awesome live streams lined up. We're going to have Dr. Monica Hanna on to be talking about her new book, The Future of Egyptology. And that's just, I haven't actually read the book yet. I should be getting it shortly. And that is just an absolutely phenomenal book and a really important one right now for conversations about archaeology. And then I'll be having Dr. Manveer Singh on to talk about his new book, which comes out, I think, May 20th. We have him on May 21st to talk about shamanism, the timeless religion. And so that's going to be a really exciting chat as well. I've been dealing with some health challenges and some other issues. I've been teaching and all this kind of stuff. And so I think that what we're about to see, if you can't tell, is we're going to see more regular live streams, 2, maybe even 3 times a week. There's a long backlog of scholars and colleagues and authors and researchers who are interested in having conversations with me and sharing their work with all of you. So I want to do the best I can to really promote my colleagues and to share the cutting edge of archaeology and anthropology and history and science communication with all of you. So there's a lot of cool stuff going on. What is Yes, I saw that, Svalvinter, that there was that looting going on in Sweden's largest burial site. But yeah, no, this is Majin. This is a legitimate book on shamanism. This is about the anthropology and archaeology of shamanism. Manveer Singh, Dr. Singh is a professor at UC Davis, and it was actually Times Book of the Month. So it should be really cool to have him on the day after it comes out. What else is going on? I'm working on a really big video debunking Homo naledi. I have several earlier videos on that topic, which you can review in advance if you're interested. But this is a really important issue in the field of Paleolithic archaeology. And Well, let's just say the findings and the ways that they have been communicated are lots of my colleagues have issues with the way that this team is communicating archaeology and the way that they are uh, hostile towards normal scientific methods and towards their colleagues. And so I have convened a panel discussion, which will be the core of this video, and it includes Erica from Gutsick Gibbon Channel, and it includes Jamie Hodgkins, a professor at University of Colorado in Denver, and then Professor Kim Fakey from George Mason University. And then I will be doing an interview tomorrow with Professor Paul Pettit from Durham University. And so it's going to be a real deep dive into this. I hope that it is really it's going to be a long video, but it's an entertaining one, and it's really fascinating to try to dive into the details here, because it tells us a lot about how archaeology works, and it tells us a lot about the kind of showboating that is problematic in our world today, especially on the internet. On that note, I've also finally found a scientist who's interested in talking about the de-extinction of the direwolf by Colossal Biosciences. So we're going to be having that conversation later in May or early June. Yes, Godfrey, Homo naledi is the species that they say introduced burial ritual and art and fire even, and it's all. Most of my colleagues think it's bullshit. I think it's bullshit as well. So yeah. Okay, so that's what's coming up. Lots of fun stuff. I have a lot of different people that I've been talking to about arranging different live streams and videos to try to really explode really cool archaeology over the internet. And this, as this channel grows, I think it's becoming more of a hub for my colleagues. They want to come on and share their research and try to make it accessible and interesting and exciting. Try to talk about the cutting edge of different methods and the cutting edge of different results, but also the kind of ethical issues and why archaeology is relevant, or how it's misused in the media or on social media and things like that. The kind of stuff I think you can come to expect. Hey, that's what we do here, right? Hey, beer break. So I want to talk to you guys today about whenever I do these big archaeology streams, which I'm going to do every time we cross a little milestone for the channel. I want to give kind of like a teaching lecture. I mean, it's tough to communicate teaching in the same way I teach in a classroom on YouTube. It's not always as flashy and as engaging, if you see what I mean. And so I use this as an excuse to kind of just chill back, have a brew, and chat with you guys, but also try to give a better sense of what archaeology is and how it's oftentimes a quick question here I'll pick up is yes, I am going to be having paleontologists on the channel for a chat. In fact, 2 different ones that I've been talking to. So over the summer, you can expect some paleontology. Yeah, so rock on. But so a lot of what I want to try to do with this channel is to try to correct misconceptions about archaeology. And I think that that's a really important thing to do. And at the same time as sharing what archaeology is. And I mean, I really have been doing archaeology for my entire life since I was like 5. I've been growing up on archaeological digs. I have discovered some really friggin' cool things. On the right, I'm in the tomb of the Griffin Warrior here. And this was a monumental tomb that's been published. And I have a cool video on it actually on the channel. It was like a teaching lecture. It hasn't gotten a lot of views. Let me actually find that and put that in the chat. Because the tomb of the Griffin Warrior was the richest find in Greece made at the time. I don't know if it's been eclipsed since. And it was quite an exciting adventure to excavate it. And it gave me a kind of different, that's the link, by the way, for the Griffin Warrior tomb. And it gave me a different appreciation for kind of burial ritual in the past, to be just excavating something that was filled with so much gold and silver and gems and bronze and ivory. And I mean, there was more treasure in there than there was dirt. It was really quite weird. It felt like I was in the 19th century or something like that. And so it was really quite cool in that sense. So I watched that video, but I've also, this is another tomb. This is in Istria in Romania. I helped discover this in both cases. I was field director, leading and managing large teams that were excavating across the sites. This one was not filled with treasure, but it was a really cool late Roman tomb. And you know, I've excavated at Abydos and in Pompeii, and I've studied material from Knossos and Athens. I mean, you know, and we think about archaeology as all about discovery. And that's how the media portrays it. That's how social media portrays it. That's how YouTubers portray it. And I really want to emphasize that that's not how archaeologists think about it. Like, yes, we do discover stuff. I'm not trying to deny that or downplay that, but that's not what we actually do. And so I want to go into that. And then first, yeah, I've been to the pyramids. Okay, this is me and my friend Alex Makovics when I was excavating at Abydos in Egypt. I was quite young at the time, and you can't see it now, but it actually rained that day. But I want to cast some shade right here. This jackass, can I say that on YouTube? Am I allowed to say jackass? This jackass, R. Dean McCreary, and I'm calling him out for a reason, as you're going to see, left this comment for me when I published the trailer for the channel. And he said, I'm a screenwriter. And I don't know why here, wait, let me put that link back in there for the Tomb of the Griffin Warrior video. He told me that he's a screenwriter and he's working on a video, a new movie, which is going to be awesome. And apparently my name came up to be an archaeology consultant. And I was immediately dismissed because apparently I do a huge disservice to my profession, which I don't think there's a single colleague of mine that has told me the same thing, but whatever. I'm sure there's a few colleagues who don't like me. In fact, I know there's a few who don't like me. Most of them think I do a decent job, even if they don't like me. But you know, we have respect for each other, let's say. But okay, whatever. So I looked up this guy since he's a screenwriter. He was one of the screenwriters for The Pope's Exorcist, which starred Russell Crowe. I've seen the movie. It was a decent movie. It was a little slow, a little boring, but it was interesting in its own right. And I thought I replied to him reasonably politely. All right, you seem to be a real person. I Googled you. Your name is what it seems to be, unless this dude's just pretending to be this screenwriter, which it's the internet. I suppose it's possible, but certainly looks reasonably legit here. I can't see why somebody would go and pretend to be a random screenwriter that I've never heard of, who has like a few credits, and then use that to troll me. That seems a little strange. So I said, you know, all right, thank you, Arcanum. I agree. There's a lot of issues that I've heard about from people in South Africa and elsewhere. So we'll be talking more about that. But so I replied to this R. Dean McCreary politely saying, I'm sorry that you don't believe me, whatever, go on your way. You're a screenwriter about fantasy stuff. Enjoy yourself. An hour ago, this guy left another comment on my YouTube. And this is why I'm calling him out. Because this was the comment he left an hour ago. You suck, Dibble. It's the sites, the megaliths, the structures that define ancient civilizations, not your pot shirts, I think he meant sherds, or your tools or your garbage that you find on site. The fallacy of conventional archaeology is that any detritus found on a site defines who and what built it. That's patently false. Look at ancient Egypt. Fools like Zahi Hawass claim it was solely Egyptian. And we know that's not true. Go dig up some more pot shirts. Dig through your trash and make bad assumptions about who or what created these ancient wonders. I stand by my statement. You suck dibble. How is this my fucking life? R. Dean McCreary, you're an idiot, is what you are. If you're an actual screenwriter, you write really shitty fantasy, and you are toxic. If this is who you are, I don't know. Maybe this is someone pretending to be the screenwriter. Don't ask me. Don't go harassing R. Dean McCreary. But like, you do realize that, yeah, it's the stuff we find that tells us about the monuments. When we find things under a monument, we know that that monument dates after those things. Like, this is pretty fucking simple. Or like, for example, this is what I study. I study the trash of the past, right? And so this is why I want to make the point to y'all that this is a problem with how archaeology is represented when it's only represented as those grand monuments, and we don't understand how the trash actually contributes to our study of the past, then we're missing out on what archaeology actually is. We're missing out on the majority, statistically speaking, of what we find. And we are missing out on the majority of what we can say about people in the past. And so that's where today I want to share sort of how we do that. I want to talk a little bit about some of my own research, some stuff I'm publishing even right now, which I'm sure will become a proper video, you know, in the medium-term future, near to medium, and whatnot. And so I study these animal bones. It's like what people ate, and it's like, you know, if all you care about is the monuments, then you're not that interested in the people in the past, right? That's the issue here. You're not interested in the people, and that's what we study. We study the ancient people that built those monuments, that engaged with those monuments, why they built them, and what they meant, and what they meant to those people. And so if we don't actually study the trash and all the little details, then we're not doing science. And we're not actually trying to understand the past. We're just looking at pretty pictures of fucking monuments. And don't get me wrong, looking at pretty pictures of monuments is kind of fun. I'm not gonna, you know, deny that. We all love a pretty picture of a monument. Pretty pictures of monuments are gorgeous, and they proliferate all over the internet. And that's actually what draws eyeballs to archaeology. I'm not gonna deny that in the least, right? Like there's no denying the value of monuments for drawing the public attention. But to think that like that's what we do and how we should do it is not what we should be thinking of, because that's not science. That's just looking at pretty pictures of monuments and creating a fantasy in your head. So let's think about these pyramids for a second. You want to tell me that these pyramids are part of a lost civilization? They were not built by Egyptians? R. Dean McCreary or anonymous troll or whoever you are as you exercise me with your Pope or whatever the fuck it is? Sorry, but you do realize that those pyramids, if you zoom in on them, they have mortar in the chinks in between their stones, and they have hieroglyphs inside the Great Pyramid. And, you know, we can use these details to fucking understand who built them and how, right? We have 269 radiocarbon measurements on monuments from the 1st through the 12th dynasty. This is published in 2016. We probably have more now. And it's like, we actually understand where those radiocarbon dates came from. We understand how they work because we've tested radiocarbon dates repeatedly in order to make sure that they work, because we've tested them against trees that have, that we know when those trees were growing because of their tree rings. We've tested them against documents that have actual ages on them, like papyri and stuff like that. We've tested them on fossils that we have the knowledge of the geological layers that they're in. We've tested I have a whole video on radiocarbon dates, actually, by the way. Let me pull that up and put it in the chat. Where we talk about the physics and how this stuff was tested, and in order to be a verifiable kind of measurement, and at the same time, guess what? Guess what, Ardeen McCreary? Not only do we have the radiocarbon dates, the hard scientific evidence that tells us these pyramids at Giza were built in the 4th dynasty, like 200, 300 years ago, but we have hieroglyphs inside the pyramids that name the pharaoh, Khufu, of the Great Pyramid, and the Egyptians wrote down stuff themselves, like, the Red Sea Scrolls, or later texts that tell us about how these pyramids were built, who built them, and why. So, go enjoy your fantasy. The reality is we don't interpret these monuments by discovering them. We interpret them based off of multiple lines of evidence, one after another, from the pottery and the grave goods within them that provide a date, to the radiocarbon dates, to the hieroglyphs, to independent textual sources, all the way down to the kind of relative sequence of construction and laying of and carving of blocks from the quarries at Giza. It's multiple lines of evidence. There's probably, one day I'm going to do a video on this and try to think through all the different multiple lines of evidence that actually tell us the date of the pyramids and the Sphinx. It's impressive, because archaeologists have been thinking on this shit for centuries, and they've been testing and refining and testing and refining, and we're at the point where it all agrees, because we've looked at so many different patterns in the evidence. And now you see where I'm getting. I bring it all around. I trash that troll, and now we're at the patterns that we're here, because that's what archaeologists look at. See, I'm riffing here. I'm on the patterns, because this is why we do this kind of work.
We said it was 8.
Of being able to recover the very little tiny pot of dirt, like my kitchen, and the little fragments of bone with which we radiocarbon date. And we do that through sieving, through flotation, through very careful, detailed analysis, in order to build huge data sets that could actually tell us about these sites. And I want to emphasize, yes, blue, I will be doing videos on other methods, without a doubt. Don't worry. This channel is just getting started, if you can't tell. But the point is there's no one smoking gun, right? It's the independent corroboration of all of the different lines of evidence that create the patterns with which we can actually understand the past, if you see what I mean. And so that's the key here. It's all this hard work to collect and record all this kind of stuff. These are my friends Evan and Hussein, by the way, that really let us put this all together. And so let's think about some patterns. Let's think about my favorite patterns, some of the patterns that I'm researching right now, to give you guys a sense of how we sort of do that. So this is a pattern that I published a couple years ago. I guess 4 years ago now. Geez, time really flies. I used to have a video. I had to take it down. I'll do another video on this at some point. Oh, thanks, Glenn. I'll do that. So this was one of my favorite patterns. So at the end of the Bronze Age, there's this collapse. If you've maybe seen my video with Eric Klein or with Paul Cooper of Fall of Civilizations, or you've read either of their books, they write extensively about the collapse of societies at the end of the Bronze Age. This is a pattern that is well documented. It's been documented for, I don't know, we're getting close to 100 years now of that being fairly well documented. And because we see the destruction of so many cities and palaces across the Eastern Mediterranean. And scholars have been debating this collapse for a very, very, very long time. There are books upon books upon books. Yes, Eric Klein's 1177 is a recent one, and Paul Cooper's Fall of Civilizations is a recent one. But there are books going back 50, 70 years on this topic, and I don't know how many articles. And so this pattern is really well documented. We see the kind of destruction of these sites. We get the sense that societies, to some degree, change in major, serious ways. And as Baton Relay from Twitch notices, wait, the Sea People and Dorian invasion, isn't that the one that destroyed Mycenaean Greece? Nope, 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 not at all. Not at all. This is the ideas that was thought of back in the 70s. The Dorian invasion is completely debunked now. We now know that that's an invention of a much later author writing 800 years later, Thucydides. The Sea Peoples, now people think they might have actually been maybe the Greeks. So we're really refining these explanations. Other people have argued that there's invaders, there's internal revolutions. It's only recently, as science has developed, particularly paleoclimate science, that what we've started to realize is that the climate gets drier right at that time. There's a series of droughts throughout the Eastern Mediterranean, and this drier climate, it's pronounced, and it's for a long time. So there's a correlation between climate change and the end of this Aegean Bronze Age. Arcanum, I'm going to get to your questions at the end. I'm pinning them. Thank you for the super chats. So there's this correlation between climate change and the end of the Bronze Age, but how do you prove the causation? How do you demonstrate that climate change was actually a trigger for what Eric Klein, calls like this domino effect, the multiplier effect that led to these collapses of societies? And so that's the thing that I and a number of hundreds of other colleagues are working on, is to try to answer that kind of question. And so I published a paper with the climatologist from Uppsala University, Martin Finet, in 2021, looking at the kind of scientific evidence. And the first question is, all right, you see this yellow line, you can see there's all these drops here. It gets drier, there's less rainfall. But the problem with our climate proxies is we don't know how much less rainfall. Is this enough rainfall to actually make a significant difference in terms of how they produce their food, to cause a drought or a famine, to cause instability due to the climate changing? I see people talking about Sea Peoples. I'm going to be having Louise Hitchcock on to talk about Sea Peoples at some point this summer, I imagine. So we'll have a whole conversation about Sea Peoples, I promise you. She's one of the leading scholars on that. And Arcanum, you can keep sending questions. I'll just get to them later. So we know that the climate is getting drier, but how do we establish that it's having a real impact on people? We have a few letters that Eric Klein publishes about a drought here or there, but the droughts happen all the time too. So it's just one isolated incident. Is that part of a larger pattern that shows that this was a trigger, a cause for the collapse of societies, because there's multiple societies that collapse at this time? And so what I worked out to do was, all right, how do you prove this? That it actually impacted people who aren't writing about it, because we don't have much writing from this period. Well, what we can maybe look for is evidence that they adapt, because this drier climate stays drier for several hundred years. So if they have to change how they produce their food in response to the drier climate, then we can actually infer that that climate was dry enough to actually lead to a trigger that impacted society, right? So that's what I set out to do, and I started looking at the I discussed in the paper sort of plants and stuff like that, but we don't have enough studies of plants across the Greek world. I was looking at the Greek world because that's what I focus on to confirm one way or the other. We do see a shift sort of from wheat to olives, but that might just have to do with the fact that the landscape is a little more depopulated, so they're not growing as much wheat intensively. That might not be due to a shift in climate, though olives are well adapted to a dry climate, so it might be an explanation, right? So that's kind of cool. The plants seem to provide an other independent line of evidence that might suggest this shift towards less wheat and towards more olives and other kinds of tree crops that work well in an arid environment. And I don't want to say wheat goes away. It sticks around, as does barley. But what to me was the smoking gun was the animal bone evidence, because we have dozens of sites across the Greek world, both in the late Bronze Age and in the early Iron Age, across this transition. And what changes dramatically is all the sites, I should have put up the slide, the image from the Bronze Age, they're all sheep dominated in the Bronze Age. They're all completely sheep dominated in the Bronze Age, right? In the Iron Age, notice that there's a range of different species now. But notice these goats all show up geographically to the eastern part of the Greek peninsula and Crete. And that to me is the smoking gun. Why? Because if you look at precipitation, rainfall, across the Greek peninsula and Crete, there's this mountain range that runs down the middle right here. And there's a mountain range right here that divides the western half of Greece and the western half of Crete from the eastern half. And what that means is that the eastern half of Greece and Crete gets half of the rainfall that the western half does. So what we'd expect is if climate change is having an impact, it's going to have more of an impact on the drier parts, the eastern parts. And that's exactly what we see. We see this shift from sheep to goats, and goats are better adapted towards drier climates, and it lines up exactly where we would expect it in the drier regions. And so to me, that's kind of a smoking gun that like, hey Milo, how's it going? It's like, hey, we can actually document this kind of change, right? We can actually see that climate has an impact because of these kind of patterns. We have the evidence for climate change. We have a few textual sources that talk about droughts. We have the shift away from wheat to olives and other tree crops. And then in particular, we see this shift to goats in dry areas. And so, bam, it's the pattern that answers the question. And now more and more scholars, and it's covered in Paul and Eric's book and other articles, are more and more convinced that climate change was one of the major triggers for the end of the Bronze Age in the Eastern Mediterranean. And so, that's the kind of patterns we look for. So now I want to talk about the site that I've been focusing on. It is this bad boy right here, Azoria. This is on Crete. It was the focus of major excavations from 2002 through 2018, I think we finished, maybe 17. And so I've been studying the animal remains since 2012, I think, 2013. And I've gone through over 200,000 specimens of animal bones. I saw someone on the internet say, Flint's lying. He hasn't looked at 1 million animal bones. That's got to be a lie. Yeah, just from this one site, I've looked at 250,000 different animal bones. I don't know what to say. Most of them are broken up little shitty pieces of shit. They're not identifiable and don't tell us much. But I've certainly looked at 1 million fucking animal bones and 250,000 from this site. And it's these patterns that can tell us what's going on, because this site has been a very scientific excavation where we're focusing on trying to understand kind of animal husbandry and agriculture. And so we use the cutting edge methods that we can to collect all the seeds and all the animal remains that we can to understand urbanization. That's the question here. This site is one of the first cities after that Bronze Age collapse to sort of the Greek city-states, you think about Athens and Sparta and Corinth. Well, this was one of those early ones. And it's a really cool one. It's around from kind of 750 BC until about 500 BC. It gets abandoned, then it turns into a military outpost after that. But it's a fairly large site that we've excavated. It's been a big job to get this done. And what's really cool here is we can look at sort of what brings together a community. And in the ancient Greek world, what brings together a community is food. You think about hanging out with your friends and your family. What do? You eat food, you drink a beer, you do these kind of things. That's what brings us together. And that was true for these ancient Greek city-states. If you were a citizen of these ancient Greek city-states, you would get free food, right? And free meat even, like free burgers and steaks on the regular, because that's what they did. We have this bad connotation of providing free food for people, but like that's what makes us better as a society. I tend to think, as somebody who studies these kind of ancient Greek cities, that if we just provided more free food for everybody to come together and eat together and drink together, I think we'd be able to solve some of our world's problems. If we could kind of just sort of, break bread and have a drink and like chill out a little bit, maybe we'd be able to develop a little bit more empathy for the people around us. And that's what's going on in these ancient Greek city-states. So I'm trying to answer this question of, how does this happen at this one city? And the way that it happens here is they love goats. They're one of those sites that it's in the eastern part of Crete. It was on that map, and they have a lot of goats. And it's clearly well adapted to the dry landscape. And it's a lot of goats. It's like 60% goat. If you lived at Azoria in Crete, you would be pretty damn tired of goats. And one of the things that really surprised me, lots of goats. There's still goats there today. This is pictures from the site and the neighborhood around it. And so there's still lots of goats today, some fantastic feta cheese and really good food in the area as well. It's one of my favorite areas of the world is Eastern Crete. It's off the tourism sort of radar because everybody goes to Western Crete. But Eastern Crete, it's like an undiscovered little oasis of like traditional rural Greek life with just fantastic food, fantastic drinks, and a lot of goats. A lot of feta cheese too. And what's really boring, I've studied, like I said, I've studied 250,000 friggin' animal bones from this site. I've been studying bones from this site for 12 years. There's so many bones that they've collected in teeth. It is, I don't know when I'm ever even going to finish. It's like, I need to get back to Greece. Yeah. And so what's really frustrating here is it's the same everywhere at the site. We have that whole site sort of, let me show this again. We have all these different regions excavated. We have houses. We have communal dining buildings where the citizens come together to feast. We have warehouses. We have civic buildings where they gather together to deliberate their democracy or whatever kind of form of government that they had. Certainly some sort of citizen-based state. And they're eating the same thing for their feasts and for their at home. They're eating goats, followed by some sheep and some pig and some cow, but goats. And I was like so depressed. It's like you study 250,000 animal bones and you're thinking to yourself, I'm going to unlock the key. Probably what they did is they had their cows for their feasts and their goats at home, right? That was my hypothesis when I started, something like that. Nope, I was fucking wrong. The pattern instead showed they ate the same fucking animals in the houses and in the communal dining spaces for their feasts. And I'm thinking to myself, how am I going to publish this? This is going to be really boring, right? It is pretty boring. It's just a lot of fucking goats. And so I started diving into the statistics, and this was my favorite one that I published a few years ago. So look, we study dogs gnawing on bones. Like, let me go back to these bones pictures. Look, there's all these bones, right? They're all broken up. They're food trash, and we want to understand the patterns in them. So one of the patterns is how many of them have been gnawed by a dog. Okay, what does that tell you? That tells you the dogs got bones. Okay, cool. But what it really tells you is that it tells you how damaged your assemblage is, because an assemblage that dogs are gnawing, well, the smaller, fragile specimens are not going to survive because dogs are eating them, while the denser, more robust, larger specimens will likely survive. So it biases your patterns because you know it's been gnawed by a dog, right? Versus something else where it hasn't been gnawed by a dog. And this is standard, we want to test the biases of our materials so we can understand the patterns that we have, right? And so when I dove into this, not surprisingly, outdoor spaces like the roads and the middens and stuff like that, dogs were gnawing the bones more frequently. And so that's not surprising. But this line right here is really interesting, and I should have gotten a different graph, a graph which talks about the kitchens, because most of the dog-gnawed bones inside those communal dining, the feasting buildings, were in the kitchens. And so what that tells me is really cool. This is my favorite thing ever. This is actually my favorite discovery I've ever discovered, because it's really fucking cool, is the people who were cooking the feasts, they shared extra treats with the dogs because there was a glut of meat at that time. So the dogs got extra treats during their feasts at the same time as humans got extra meat during their feasts. It was mostly goat bones that the dogs got. But either way, that's freaking cool. Like the citizens of the community come together. They have a big sacrificial festival. They all honor the gods. They all, do their politics and their economics while chatting over some wine and eating some goat flesh. And guess who else gets to feast? This little dog down here, if we can zoom in on him for a second, this is a cool vase. Look, he has a little hoof in his mouth right here. So what you're seeing is this is an Athenian pot from the same time period, like 500 BC-ish, 550 BC-ish. This is somebody drinking a big glass of wine right here, a rich person, a musician playing for them and some other people sort of around. The woman over here, I guess, hugging him. Down here, hanging off of here, these are legs from sheep or goats or cattle, something like that. Probably cattle, they're pretty big. And that's from the sacrificial feast that happened. And then down here is the dog underneath the couch, and he's got a little hoof in his mouth. He's got this. Can I zoom in even further? I won't let me zoom in any further, but do you see this right here? He's got this little tiny hoof in his mouth. The dog got a treat for the feast too, right? And so we have, again, these vases, these painted vases of dogs with their little treat during a feast. And boom, we have the statistical evidence, the pattern from this site that shows that those who were cooking for the community, they shared some extra bones with dogs during their feasts. And it's like a little slice of human life of how this site was used. So what else do we got? The big take-home pattern that I was publishing earlier is butchery. They're butchering their animals differently for these feasts in these communal dining buildings than they are at home. And what they're doing is they're using, I should have gotten like a prop, they're using cleavers to just, boom, chop right through the legs of the animals and the bones of the animals. And they're doing that for their feasts. While at home, they're using knives to do a little slice to cut the meat off the bone, right? And so it's a different cut of meat, and it's probably trained professional butchers that were probably priests as well. And so because these cleaver chops, what we're looking at here is these chops right down the middle of the vertebra, of the spinal column. They go to chop the carcass of the animal in half. And if you go to modern Athens today and you go to the traditional central market, you'll still see Greek butchers doing this exactly the same way, doing a chop, 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 chop right through, splitting the carcass right down the middle. And so that's one of the types of chops that they're doing. They're also specifically showing up on the shoulder blade and the hip, pelvis of these animals. And they're doing a big chop to disarticulate the limbs of the animals, their front and their back legs, using these cleavers. And the reason why these are likely professional butchers is, I don't have the video. I meant to boot up the video of my database. I have this really cool, fancy database. I do software design as well. And I designed this database where I can map out butchery marks and burning marks on the skeleton of these animals that I study. And so these chop marks are all in one zone. They're all right here in this little tiny zone. If this is just the map of chop marks. This is the map of different chop marks at the site on the back leg of these sheep and goat. And they concentrate right here. There's 17 in this one zone. No other zone has more than 4. And other sites that I've studied, like ancient Athens, they do it differently. They don't chop in that zone. So there's no reason that you have to chop in this one little tight zone. They do it because that's how the professional butchers were trained to do it at that site. And so that's really cool. We have documentary evidence texts from other sites nearby that talks about how butchers were actually the priests, the ones who officiated the ceremony. They were important people in these communities. So they did this all outside probably. They slaughtered the animal and sacrificed them to the gods. They would burn some of the body parts, the thigh bones probably, for the deities. And then part of the ceremony is this chopping right through the pelvis, the thigh, and the shoulder, and through the vertebra. And it creates this kind of ceremony, which then these cuts then go inside, where the dogs then get the treats from the people cooking the meal. And then the community comes together, says, hallelujah, let's have a drink together and let's have a meal together. And this is how we use these patterns. So, okay, this is all already published stuff, okay? This is what I was working on until fairly recently, let's say, a few years ago, when I was studying the material by hand. Then I got this really awesome grant from the European Research Commission to come here to Cardiff. That's actually how I ended up here at Cardiff. I got this grant to study this material biomolecularly. So we have this big question, right? So we have these animals that are consumed in feasts. We see that they are processed differently. We know that from the butchery marks, right? We see that there's a glut of animals. We know there's enough extras that they can afford to just give dogs extra bones instead of using them in their soups and their stews. But where are these animals coming from? How is the economy of this feasting happening? Is for example, who is providing these animals for the citizens to feast on, right? That's the kind of big question. And there's been this debate that's been raging in ancient Greek history and ancient Greek archaeology for, it's been going on since 1920 something. W.C. Semple, I think, published the first article on this in the 1920s, or as part of a book, actually, part of a chapter of his book on the ancient Greek landscape. And if you go to Greece today, you'll see a lot of goats like this, right? And what they do is they move seasonally up and down from the mountains to the lowlands. They're in the mountains in the summer, they're in the lowlands in the winter. And so a lot of people said W.C. Semple was the first one. That's how they did it in the past. They had these big herds of sheep and goat, and they moved up and down between the winter and the summer, because you can therefore strategically take advantage of different pastures and different grazing by doing that. Then some other people came around and said, ancient Greece is not like modern Greece. It's a different economy. And from what we can see, from what we have, most likely there were smaller herds of animals than existed today. These are large herds of goats that go up and down. Probably people in the past had just a handful of animals, and they were attached to their farmland. So they weren't moving. They were instead grazing on stubble, or they were growing fodder for them, or they'd have crop rotation and they'd rotate the animals across their farmland. So nobody's really been able to answer this question. And that's the question I'm trying to answer. It's actually called the agro-pastoral debate. And this debate, like I said, there have been hundreds of articles and book chapters and whole books written on this. And there's no real conclusion because we don't have direct evidence of animals and what they eat and where they move seasonally until we develop some new methods. Archaeologists developed these methods about 10, 15, well, really about 15, 20 years ago is when they started being developed and refined. They've become standard practice over the last 10 years, and they're becoming fairly common in the last 5 years since I've started doing it. And what this is to do isotope analysis. You take these samples. You can imagine you have a tooth like this, right? Your tooth right here. Your tooth is growing when you're a child, right? And you can see it kind of growing over the course of, say, a year, where it starts off poking out and then it ends up coming fully formed. And it's growing during the course of that year. And the enamel in your tooth, the white part on the outside, that actually is very stable. So your bones, for example, the chemistry of your bones changes as you get older. The chemistry of your enamel, on the other hand, is locked in from what you were eating and what you were drinking when that enamel was growing, when your tooth was growing. And so what we can therefore do is take multiple samples up a tooth, and we can get a different signature of the diet and the geological regions that these animals were in different seasons of the year. And so what that lets us do is answer that debate. Were these animals moving up and down? Were they attached to farmland? I'm the one who can answer this question for you all. In fact, I'm the one person in the world who can answer this question with a large data set because I have a pattern that I'm looking at. I have those 250,000 fucking animal remains that I've studied from this site. It's one of the largest collections of animal remains in the entire Mediterranean world. And it's from right at this period to answer this question, and it was collected scientifically. And thank you, European Union and Cardiff University. You gave me funds and facilities to be able to answer this kind of question. So I've done this now with 51 different teeth. Bada boom, bada bing. So this is too complicated to explain. Let's just go to this. So what we're looking at here, this is that tooth row, right? So this is what we're looking at here. This is the sample at the bottom of the tooth. So the last one to grow. This is the sample at the top of the tooth. So the first one to grow. And what we're looking at here, the white dots are oxygen, the ratio of different oxygen isotopes. And what that tells us is the season of the year. When the white dot is at the top, that means that's a period of summer. When that tooth was forming at that time, it was in the summer. When the white dot is at the bottom, that tells us that that was during the winter when the tooth was forming. The black dots, that's carbon. It's the ratio of stable carbon. So not C14, that's unstable carbon, that's radiocarbon. It's carbon-12 and carbon-13, the ratio of those two stable isotopes. And that tells us about the diet of the animal, the kinds of plants that the animal was eating. Now, normally, if an animal was staying in the same location and just eating the seasonal grasses that were growing there, and the same sort of grasses, these grasses, they change their carbon signatures seasonally, and they change it to mirror, in a sense, this oxygen curve. So when you have correlation, where the carbon matches the oxygen, these animals are in the same location, and they are eating the kind of grass and the pasture land that's around, those kind of plants around. Chris Siebert, you asked, why do the oxygen isotopes change? No, it doesn't have to do with increased sunlight. It actually has to do with water. 1 second, let me find a PowerPoint. Let me see if I can find a quick PowerPoint from my teaching, and I can explain this to you in more detail. I think, does this have it? Sorry. It's a really good question, actually. No, it has to do with the weight of the water. What's going on? Sorry, let me. No, I'm sure I have this somewhere. Come on. It has to do with how heavy the isotope is. So you imagine you have an oxygen 13 that weighs more than come on. So you have these two isotopes. Yeah, sorry, it's not oxygen 13, it's oxygen 16 and oxygen 18. And what this has to do with the number of neutrons that it has. So oxygen 18 weighs more than oxygen 16. I'm still trying to find this stupid, maybe it's in here. Oxygen 18 weighs more than oxygen 16. So what you could imagine is that when it's hotter out, there's more evaporation, and so when it means that when it's hotter out, there's more evaporation. So it evaporates more of it. So there's actually more 18 oxygen, the heavier one, evaporating, because there's so much more evaporation that it changes the ratios. When there's less evaporation, it preferentially evaporates the lighter isotope. But when it's really, really dry, both of them evaporate. And so the ratio of it changes. On the vice versa, when it's raining, it's gonna, the first oxygen molecules to fall are gonna be the ones that are heavier. So when it rains a lot, you end up having more of the 16O. I have a really good image of this. Where is it? Ah, no. All right, I don't have the image with me, I guess. Is the answer here? Maybe? No, I'd have to spend more time finding it. I have too many teaching PowerPoints. But in a sense, what that means, therefore, is during the summer, what you end up with is I can go back to the initial graphs, wherever the hell they are. It's this one. Come on. There we go. So what you're seeing here is that the weight of the oxygen isotopes, the ratio is of oxygen 18 to oxygen 16 is less, while here they're heavier in the winter when it's wetter, is the difference here. And so that's why they change seasonally. And this happens for us, this happens for plants, this happens for animals, this happens for the water. If you were to test the water in a pond, for example, during the winter versus the summer, you'd end up with a different ratio of oxygen 18 to oxygen 16 because of the weight of those isotopes when it's dry versus when it's wet. Sorry. Yeah. We went on and on. Thanks. So that's why. While the carbon has to do actually with plants and how they process water, the transpiration, and that's why they change. And so back to where we were, if you're looking at the plants and how they change seasonally, they mirror their ratio of oxygen 13 to carbon 13 to carbon 12 with the oxygen ratio. There's this correlation that would occur. And so this is what you see from animals in a Mediterranean type climate when they're grazing on pastures. On the other hand, when you have an inverse correlation, that shows you that there's something off with the seasonal pattern in what these animals are eating. And what that tells us is that they're moving between the uplands and the lowlands, because the uplands have a different microclimate than the lowlands do. And so it causes this kind of reverse shift. This has been reasonably well documented by Cheryl Makarevitz of the University of Kiel and some others. Carl Tornero in Spain. Where's he at? Barcelona, maybe, I forget. And so yeah, it's been fairly well documented. And what's really cool at this site, when we're looking at kind of where do these patterns show up? Where do they show up? They show up in different places. My animals that are grazing in the same location all year round, they're showing up in the houses. On the other hand, the animals that were being feasted on, those that were being chopped through, those that were being fed to the dogs, those are in bigger herds that are moving up and down seasonally. So there's a completely different economy going on to feed these feasts. When people come together and feast on food and drink together, they're eating the same kind of animals, mostly goats, but they're eating animals that were butchered in different ways and that were managed in different ways and that were raised in completely different herds. And so what this tells us is that there's probably communal herds. So the city-state owns these herds and manages these larger herds of sheep and goat that move and migrate in different ways seasonally in order to give everybody some free food. Because you get some free food, you have some drinks and some food together, and then bam, you cooperate, you collaborate, you have a successful community, and your city grows and thrives and survives. And that is the flourishing that we see in ancient Greece at this time. This kind of, flourishing of ancient Athens and Sparta and Corinth and all those kind of places, that is due largely to this kind of feasting regimen. And so that's why we look at these kind of patterns. These kind of patterns are what tells us about the past. It tells us about the people, the animals, and what they were all doing together. And so that's how we try to study the past. This is why today archaeology is very much a science. We develop hypotheses. I had very clear hypotheses. There's going to be a difference between public dining and eating at home. That was my hypothesis that got me the grant, right? And at first, it was kind of crazy where I didn't see that difference. And so I published it and I'm like, man, I have like no differences here. This is a waste. Then I got more money to say, well, let's test some other methods. And bam, I was able to discover this kind of stuff. So this is what we do. So a few little questions on this. Could the feasting goats be wild rather than farmed? No, these are very clearly domesticated goats. There's a difference in the bone structure of them. And also those management patterns that I showed, that would have to be human-controlled management to do that kind of mobility like that in that kind of set way. People have looked at wild goats and how they manifest seasonally, and it's very, very different kind of diet and different kind of mobility. So that's a really good question. Okay. So I got some questions in advance from patrons. Sign up for my Patreon, help support the channel so we can do more. As I've teased before, we're moving hopefully towards more in-person, on-site, in-museum, and behind-the-scenes videos is what I really want to move for. And so your support will help us do those kind of things. The kind of perks that you get is you get advanced access to what I'm working on and what I'm doing. You also get the ability to ask questions in advance, and you get teaching lectures and extra videos that talk about this kind of stuff for you. So the first question we got from Patreons before we move to all the rest of your questions for a little bit is from John Apple. Hi, Flint. I'd like to hear about environmental archaeology and how it ties into your zoological archaeology, what the two areas can tell us about the past, and the power of using them together. What can I say? I'm an interdisciplinary guy. John, I hope I sort of already answered that question because that's exactly what I do. Is I try to put together these different independent lines of evidence. I talked before about working with climatologists like Martin Finet. I published a few different articles with different climatologists in order to understand how agricultural practices and animal husbandry relate to climatic changes in the ancient Greek world. And at the same time, I work with the people that study the seeds. I work with the people that study the pottery. I work with the people that study the different spaces that we excavate, so that we know that this room is a kitchen and that's a storeroom, so that I can put together these patterns at this site and at the different sites that I work at. And so archaeology is extremely interdisciplinary at this point. You see these bozos on social media saying, archaeologists don't work with scientists. And it's like, man, I've published papers with geologists, with pollen experts, with climatologists, with pottery experts, with historians who study textual evidence, with art historians that study ancient art. I've published papers with all these people. What we do is we collaborate with architects. I work with architects on these sites. Like, I worked with an architect once who helped us map a site. He designed skyscrapers in Dubai, and in his vacation, he would come and work with us on archaeological sites. Like, archaeology is about as interdisciplinary as we can get. And these days, because environmental sciences is one of the things that has gotten a lot of funding and has had a lot of development in methods, we collaborate a ton with environmental scientists right now, especially me as an environmental archaeologist. And so the kind of things that I do, it was geochemists actually that worked out these isotope patterns, and then organic chemists that worked out how to apply them to animals and plants and things like that. And then an archaeologist that figured out how to understand them within the context that they're in. And so that's kind of how we go about doing these kind of things. So yeah, it's really, I'm very much an interdisciplinary kind of guy as well, as you can see. I read ancient Greek, I do modern science, and that's what I do. I work in a scientific laboratory. I manage field projects. I design software. I teach students, and I have a database on ancient Greek animals. So like that's what modern archaeology is all about, and it's very collaborative to get input from a larger group of people. The paper that I'm leading right now on this isotope analysis, we have I think 6 different authors on it that have contributed in different ways. So it's very, very interdisciplinary. One of them is a geochemist, and another one is our illustrator. So yeah, so another one is the site director, who studied the pottery and stuff like that, and the architecture. Meat Eater asked, do you plan to release a video for Professor Dave Get to Know a Scientist series? It would be cool if you or any of your colleagues could show your day-to-day work. Yes. Now that we've gotten this new camera set up, I'm hoping to do a live from the lab video at some point. I might make it a members first video. I need to think on it, or patrons and members first, but I will definitely be doing more from the lab. And yes, in particular, I will be doing a video for Professor Dave for his Get to Know a Scientist series, and I hope to convince more of my colleagues to as well, and maybe help out some of them to create their versions of their videos, because I think it's really important for scientists, as I'm sure you all know, to get on things like YouTube and social media and share what we do and humanize who we are, because like we are under serious attack by this kind of misinformation conspiracy community, and we really have to put the face on who scientists are and what we do and how it works. And it's tough to explain. A lot of this stuff is very, very difficult to explain. Yes, make sure everybody leaves a like and a comment when this is done, so that the algorithm, Zeus, almighty Zeus, take my offering of my beer and my goat flesh, because we want people to see this kind of stuff. We want to make this stuff cool. That's really my goal here, is to make this stuff cool. I want to be a platform that supports the diversity of my colleagues and what we all do, and also shares my own approach to how we do this kind of stuff. As I'm sure many of you know, my university is facing serious cuts right now. There's a real serious chance I'm going to be becoming more of a full-time YouTuber. I just signed my book contract. I've seen people ask me when my book will come out. I have my UK publisher finally lined up, Atlantic Books, here in the UK, and I expect it should come out in 2026, maybe early 2027. Publishing is always a long way off, but I'll have a big book on Atlantis and ancient civilizations and things like that. lost civilizations and the kind of work that I do in that realm. And we're working on finding a U.S. publisher right now. So, I firmly believe in making this stuff accessible, and I firmly believe in trying to make this stuff popular. And I don't know, I feel grateful to have found my voice speaking to all of you. I mean, I've been obviously teaching, and I give in-person lectures to students, and even at retirement communities and in museums, and I've given site tours and lab tours to I don't know how many thousands of people. But at the same time, like the kind of reach that I've been able to find on YouTube and on social media, it absolutely awes me. It's not at the point where it's sustainable just yet to turn into a full-time job. But I think that this is very valuable. And I think if I could teach the public while doing my research, I think that would do a real great service for our world right now with all the misinformation and conspiracies that are out there. We have to kind of why Iskanik, I don't know how you're blocked. Are you blocked on what? On YouTube? Or what? But I don't know if I'll be in Cardiff on Monday, but or Twitter, you need to tell me what your handle is and what platform. If I blocked you, I'm sorry, I get harassed a lot. Are you the same handle? If you're the same handle, I'll unblock you. If it turns out your handle is like illegitimate scholar or debunking past, no, I'm not going to unblock you. Okay, I'll unblock you. Sorry, I get a lot of harassment and I'm quick to block. And I know that sometimes people are just joking around, but I can't. I'm just going to fucking block people if they're rude to me. But I will, as you see, if you're polite to me, I will unblock you. Oh, you're this dude. All right. Well, you better think about how you communicate to me and my colleagues. You're unblocked for now, but trolling us a lot and parodying these kind of conspiracy theories is not the way to go. Well, you say that, but whatever. Let's see how you go. I'll give you a second shot, okay, Iskanik? So I do remember the exchange with you. And I do get a lot of harassment, and I have zero fucking tolerance. I guess in this one case, because you're polite right now, you got one strike, let's say. So okay, let's get some questions in here. I will hang out and answer some questions for, I don't know, 20 minutes. Then I got to eat some dinner. So yeah, let's do it. So I saw there were a couple super chats from Arcanum. Was wondering what I thought of Douglas Murray calling out Rogan on his platform for giving on his podcast for giving a platform to pseudoscientific grifters. Yeah, I think that some of his points were spot on. I didn't agree with everything Douglas Murray said on that episode. I didn't see the whole episode. I'm not an avid Joe Rogan watcher. I'm not going to lie, but I did see some of the chatter and I saw that clip, and I think that it's definitely spot on. I'm still slowly working through exactly what I want to say to Joe Rogan as a response to how he's been treating me. I clearly live in his brain. I've counted it up. I think he's mentioned me about a dozen times since I was on there. Some of them good, but most of them obviously slanderous, calling me liar and junk like that. And I'm working towards a reply. I will tell you all that I asked to go back on to clear my name, and I know he got the message because I know it was forwarded to him, but I got no fucking reply. And a few days later, he called me out on his Instagram. So yeah, I'm working on my message. I have a clear message and a point that I want to make about Joe Rogan and who he is and how he's treated me and how he's treated other scientists. And I want to make sure that I do it appropriately so that it gets A, seen widely, and B, makes the points that I want to make. So I will be working on that. I have been working on it. The video is half scripted, but I want to just make sure I get the right point across. In the meantime, Joe, if you want to have me on to clear my name, I'm happy to go talk about real archaeology on your podcast. And you don't have to clear my name. You can fucking tell me whatever you want to my face, and then I'll tell you what I think to your face. is what will happen. And at the same time, we'll have a lively conversation about real archaeology in front of millions of people, which I think is valuable in and of itself, despite the fact that you do have on a lot of people that I would call pseudoscientists and grifters. That's all I got to say for now on that. My views on Randall Carlson claiming water erosion. Yeah, this is all total crap. I have a video, the geoarchaeology of the Sphinx, with Robert Schneiker and Dan Fallu, which talk some of this, specifically thinking about the Sphinx itself. So let me post that in the chat. And Sphinx video. Can you come with? I mean, I'll give you a heads up. Rogan is a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. That's my conclusion of the video that I'm going to make. Let's leave it at that. We'll see. You'll see what I mean when I make the video. So, you know, I've met Rogan. He's a smart guy. He's a smart, charismatic dude, and he knows what he's doing, and what he does intentionally and strategically, is my read on Rogan. And yes, I actually find it, a shout out to the Joe Rogan subreddit and the support that many people on there give me, because it's clear that I made a big impression on many of Joe Rogan's fans and obviously Graham Hancock's fans. And I think that that's important. Yes. I haven't seen all of them, but definitely go check out Night Scarab and his debunking of the granite vases. I also am slowly working on a granite vase video. I have finally figured out what my thesis is. It's taken me a while because I'm very careful. If you saw my video on the archaeology wars, I hope you realize that my public communication is designed to be extremely deliberate. I want to make sure that I make the arguments, A, with really good evidence, and B, in a way that is going to show people that evidence so that the evidence convinces them of the patterns that us archaeologists come to, right? And so this granite vase one is one that's taken me a long time because it's a very big topic. And I have my own independent take on it. I'm not going to reveal it right now, but I think it's going to blow the steam off, and it'll collaborate and corroborate the videos that people like Night Scarab and Scientists Against Myth and David Miano have made on this topic. By the way, David has said that he's going to come on the channel at some point in the near to medium term future. So we're going to have an awesome chat. David's a great dude. And I didn't put on that thing, I'm recording a video with Stefan Milo for the channel next week. So you'll probably see that either end of the month or early next month. So yeah, so we got a dinner. No, dude, I'm in the UK. It's 8:30 p.m. here. I'm in Cardiff, Wales. So yeah, I'll be doing dinner soon. Were there mystery schools in ancient Greece? Hey, Max, good question. No, there weren't what we call mystery schools. There were certain cults, religious practices that are labeled the mysteries. And in fact, this is also something, I have too many videos to make, man. This is where, if you guys support me and I can move to doing this full time, I have like a whole series on the ancient mysteries I'd like to do, because the way people think of mysteries as a term is especially online on YouTube, is just totally bunk. But like, if you think about the Eleusinian mysteries, or the Isis, the mysteries of Isis, or the mysteries of Mithras, there are these certain types of cultic behavior where everything is a mystery. And in many ways, Christianity, as it develops in the early first millennium BC, it adopts and adapts a lot of the components of these kind of mystery cults. And so there's a lot of really interesting things to say about these mystery cults. They're a big component of my undergrad thesis, actually. My undergrad thesis was on narcotics and hallucinogens in ancient Greco-Roman magic spells. And the part of it dealt with these kind of mystery cults. And so I definitely have some research and some videos, and especially the stuff that's online that you see about like stuff like the Eleusinian mysteries and stuff. It's oftentimes, mostly, a bunch of bunk. But yeah, so that's something we can talk about more in the future. Let's see. Oh, I already answered your question, Franklin. Yes, we're planning on doing a collaboration together. And in fact, he recorded a little snippet for my Big Atlantis video. I've been working on my Atlantis video for 2 years, and we're slowly almost there. We have all the voice acting done. We're moving on some animation. And then this is why I joined YouTube, was this Atlantis video. It's also the core of a chapter of my book. And so David Miano has a cameo in that. And then we're hoping to do a live stream together, I think, either later this month or probably in June, since we need to figure that out. Can I incorporate some ancient Greek language? So you mean some videos on ancient Greek is what I'm assuming you mean, Heath. Yeah, I could do some. I'm not like a philologist per se, but I'll have on some of my colleagues and scholars who study aspects of ancient Greek language. Like I said, I'm hoping to do a live stream. Has he replied yet? Hopefully Friday. I need to see if they're available. We'll do a live stream on the Herculaneum papyri, and they're in Greek, and I'll have a philologist on. And so we'll be talking about the machine learning and the digital unrolling of the Herculaneum papyri and what they tell us about ancient Greek philosophy, actually. Have I seen Tim Hedeker's Joe Rogan parody? No, Christopher, I've not. I will Google it, though. I'll check it out, is the answer to you. Go check it out, everybody, if it's good. Does the upturn in temperature in ancient Greece correspond to the downturn in climate in Northeast Europe? My thoughts would be a major shift in the jet stream. It's not a change in temperature. It actually gets colder and drier at that time. We're talking the end of the Bronze Age here. But I'm not sure about Northeastern Europe, what's going on at that time. Let me do a quick search. My second book, by the way, that I want to pitch soon enough is about the archaeology of ancient climate change. And I want to do a big series on that. That's going to be down the road, though. That's not going to happen for at least a year. I have too many things to do, as you can see. Let's see. If you want the answer, read this article. Stuart, this article is the place to go. It's written by Barry Malloy, and it summarizes the climate change at that time across Europe. I have read it. I'm cited in it. Barry Malloy, he's at Dublin, University College Dublin. He's awesome. He's a really cool dude and a great archaeologist. And that's a really, really up-to-date summary. I should have him on at some point, actually, to talk about this. That would be a really great conversation. Let's see. Q&A. Part-time MA classical arch student, and I'm seeing a lot of apathy about the grad world from course mates. You mean like I don't know what you mean about apathy about the grad world. Tana, can you clarify your question? I think you're saying you see a lot of apathy. People are not interested in applying for PhD programs. If that's the case, then I think that makes sense with all the challenges that higher education is facing. It's not the same sort of stable career that it was. We're seeing thousands and thousands of people losing jobs across the spectrum of higher education here in the UK and in the US and in Europe. There's a major downturn in higher education jobs, and so it's a real challenging environment to spend a decade of your life as a student in order to probably not get a job. So if that's the question you're asking, let me scroll down on the chat, see if you answered me. Whoa, there's a lot of chats here. I'm way up high. Job-related, PhD, yeah. And so look, there's a lot of challenges right now in higher education. I've been covering a little bit of that on my channel, but I plan on covering more. And so it makes sense. And this is real. This is dire. This means that basically only wealthy people are going to be able to become archaeologists and stuff like that, because you need to have that stability. And that's going to change the field in really significant ways in the next generation. And I don't think that's a good thing. All right, I'm going to try to get through some questions quickly. Do I think that Milo and I are going to collaborate more in the future? Yes, I hope so. We were just on the phone actually right before this live stream. We're organizing, we just did a workshop together at the Society for American Archaeology meetings, where we help train grad students and even people with PhDs and professorships how to do better video content creation to try to do more public engagement. And so we're in the early stages with our students. They're not our students, it was one workshop, but they're our students, I guess. And we're going to do a festival in mid to late June, highlighting the products that they're all creating. And we're going to do some videos. And yeah, I think we'll do more. Milo is, I think, a really amazing public communicator. He's extremely charismatic. He's very smart. I definitely, I think it's worthwhile to work with people like that. And he's a nice guy. Having met him a few times, he's a very nice guy. So I want to work with people who are like that. And I mean, as you can tell, I want to work with a lot of different people. One of my big goals is to build out this ecosystem of scholars and YouTubers and podcasters, and to try to get us working together more and giving more shout outs and connections. Is how I see is the best way to build a community that can actually start making real science and real archaeology and real history cool and strong and visible. Let's see, a bunch of nice comments. Thank you all. Yes, Glenn, we should get in touch, and you should just share with me some nice photos. I'm looking for questions. Yes, Iskanic, I would love to collaborate with Stephen Fry. I don't know how to get in touch with him. He's a different level of celebrity in many ways, but we'll see. I don't think I'd call Christianity a human sacrifice cult. There's certainly no real good evidence for that in the ancient world. Well, Glenn, these mystery cults are definitely different. They take on a very different meaning in the Greco-Roman world. There's no real clear... Oh, you're talking specifically ISIS. So the mystery cult of ISIS is this weird later Roman period adaptation of the Egyptian cult. And I don't think it has much to do with Indian religion, though. But it's something I could maybe have somebody on to talk about. I know some people that study the cult of ISIS. Let's see. Hey, Kaylee, how's it going? Good to see you here. So Godfrey, you asked, when did goats end up on the island of Crete or any other animals and domesticated? So goats, sheep, pigs, and cattle were all domesticated in Southwest Asia. So in the Fertile Crescent area. And we're talking, 10,000-ish years ago, give or take. They're domesticated slightly different times. I definitely want to have Melinda Zeter on to talk about the domestication of some of these animals, because she's like the world's expert at the Smithsonian, and she's awesome. So they eventually, this Neolithic package of domesticated plants and animals migrates to Europe with the people that bring these plants and animals. And they end up on Crete. I'm going to get my dates wrong. Something around 5000 BCE is the initial Neolithic, the arrival of Neolithic people on Crete. I think the earliest evidence is actually from Knossos, the palace, the Palace of Minos. It's not the Palace of Minos at that point. I could actually ask Valisi Izakidou. I co-author with her. She's the one who studies all the Neolithic and Bronze Age animals from Knossos. I'm the one who studies all the Iron Age and Roman material and classical Greek material from the site of Knossos. We are about to publish an article together on the animals at Knossos. So I should ask her. She's the person to ask. She's the expert. Yes, I agree with you, Baton Relay. 100K subs before 2026. Let's make this happen, everybody. Everybody leave a like. Tell your friends, share my videos. Let's do this. Let's see. Yes, Kaylee, I agree. We work on these things sometimes for these videos. I've been working on my Atlantis video for 2 years. Like I said, we have animation, we have voice actors, I have music. It's all, my end is all recorded, but it's just there's a lot of different things. I want to make it really, really pop. And I should talk to Milo. We should release our Atlantis videos at the same time so they create like kind of like this synergy, which would be good. Let's see. Aha, Esperanza, this is what you were asking about. Modern Greek is obviously related to ancient Greek. It's like how Latin and Italian are different languages. They're similar in many ways, but they are different languages. If you learn ancient Greek and try to go to Athens, Greece today and speak ancient Greek, nobody's going to understand a word you say. And yes, many of my friends have tried to do that. You get in the taxi at Athens airport and you're like, "Hi," and they're like, "Elare, tinafto." And so it's just a different language. Let's see. Viceroy Viceroy Akutli. Thank you, first of all, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. Were psychedelic mushrooms used in the Greek era? And if so, for religious purposes? Ooh, this is a really good question, and I'm a good person to ask on this. So that's a challenging one. The answer is probably, but we don't have the best evidence one way or the other is the answer. I would say most scholars of Greek religion and pharmacogenic substances would assume that yes, that mushrooms of various types were eaten occasionally for their intoxicating purposes. But the problem is fungi don't preserve in the same way that plants preserve. So we don't have much good archaeological evidence, and the textual references are vague and ambiguous. I will be doing a video for sure on the idea of ergot being the fuel behind the Eleusinian mysteries. That's something that it's a video I really want to do, and it'll be really popular. Though some people might not like it because it's, well, it'll be fun. Most people will like it. Most of you will like it. Some other people might not. But yeah, I would tend to guess, if I was to guess, I would say that psychedelic mushrooms were used on occasion and probably in some cases for religious purposes, but it's something that we don't have the greatest evidence for. But they were using other substances of similar sorts, and we know that for sure. So the logical guess parsimoniously is probably, but the evidence is not great. Let's see, Linear A. There was a new article that just came out on Linear A, Marty Moose. New. Come on, where is it? Man, I'm getting all kinds of crazy, stupid things. I don't know. I can't find it right now off the top of my head, but there was an article of this new Linear A object that had like a ton of characters on it. Ah, is this it? Yes. Here, this is a quick link on the World History Encyclopedia, a great resource. This was recently discovered, and I think that artificial intelligence isn't going to necessarily help us, though maybe. Maybe machine learning will help us, but I think it's mostly just that we need more. And once we get more of these symbols in clear context, I think, and certain aspects of Linear A we can already translate because there's a duplication of signs for certain things like numbers and physical objects that are the same between Linear A and Linear B. So there are scholars that have reasonable grasps on certain aspects of Linear A already. And the more we find, the more we can piece together. I'm not sure if artificial intelligence will be the key to that or just human ingenuity. We'll see. Let's see. No, I've never heard of the channel Without History and the claims they make about African Greek tribes, so I don't have an answer for you, Gabriel. Thanks for stopping by, Kaylee. Let's see. Have I heard of Nebula? Yes, I have. I don't know how to get on there. I think you need a special invite. Maybe I should tell Stefan Milo to give me an invite. I don't know. I think you need a special invite, though, to get on there. I would be happy to post my videos on multiple platforms. I think that's good to get it out there. All right, I got to zoom down. What are my thoughts on the Longue Caves? Where is the excavated material? Chris DeMarco, I don't know the site that you're talking about. I really appreciate the super thanks, but I have no insight into what's going on in these Chinese caves and what you're talking about. So I don't have an answer. is all I can say. I just don't know. I'm sorry, but I really do appreciate the super chat. Who is my favorite podcaster? I don't know. There's a lot of really good podcasters. In the ancient history space, I'd say sort of two different sides. I think Paul M.M. Cooper, who I had on for a video recently, I think his Fall of Civilizations videos and podcasts are phenomenal. On the more strictly audio side and thinking about ancient myths, I think Let's Talk About Myths, Baby, hosted by Liv Albert. I think she's created just a super popular, awesome podcast as well. And so I think the two of those, in my mind, are, you know, stellar, grade A podcasters who feature up-to-date research and up-to-date scholarship and make sure to highlight the nuances behind the materials that they present. So I really like them, and I like the fact just how popular and exciting they are as well. I think that's important. And yes, somebody mentioned the Archaeology Podcast Network. The Archaeology Podcast Network is amazing. I should have mentioned that as well, without a doubt. They have the Archaeology Show, the Pseudo Archaeology Show. They have a wide range of podcasts, and they're phenomenal. And I'm planning on doing more collaborations with different members of them. I'm going to have Andrew Kinkella on relatively soon, and he hosts the Pseudo Archaeology podcast for the Archaeology Podcast Network, and he also has a great YouTube channel. You don't. I mean, you can, I guess, if you post it to Twitter or something, but I mean, I'm probably just going to say it's just a rock. But I see you have the sarcasm there. Thank you, buddy. Do I have any animal I want to study? Goats, man. Goats are my favorite study, if you can't tell. Goats are the goat, if you see what I mean. Let's see. What else? Some birthday wishes. Thank you all. I'm going to scroll down to the end, and I think I'm going to call this in a second. Chris, like I said, I don't have a good answer to you. I'm sorry. I wish I did. I don't know much about the Longue Caves. I don't know much about the archaeology of China, to be honest. It's something I should get some people on. I'm going to have a professor from University of Seoul on to talk about South Asian archaeobotany soon, Professor Jennifer Bates, but I don't know too much about the archaeology of East Asia. I've never been there, and I've never really studied it. Let's see. Let's scroll down, make sure I'm not missing any super thanks. All right, guys, I think I need to, oh, wait. Dust King just wanted to say hi. Thank you, Dust King. Hi. I understand the switch to BC and C, but why not choose a different reference point in history to separate the eras or at all? I think it's just because it's already so ingrained in all of our literature. If you have to all of a sudden shift, I mean, my argument would be we should go to BP, before present. That's what scientific dating does. We use before present. And do you know what present is? It's 1950. That is how present is set in all scientific dating: radiocarbon, thermoluminescence, uranium, thorium, any of the different kinds of scientific chronometry that we do. We use BP, and present is 1950. So maybe eventually we'll shift. Already the scientific community has largely shifted in their papers, but it's a large, large work to do. And archaeologists and historians have largely not shifted. I'm comfortable writing in both. Yeah. Angie G, no, I do not drink Leffe exclusively, though Leffe is one of my favorite beers, and it's oftentimes on sale where I shop. But you'll see me sometimes on here with a Guinness or a Red Stripe, or I don't know, a Doom Bar, or some nice old ale from craft ale from here in the UK. But Leffe, like I said, for some reason it's oftentimes on sale, and I really like Leffe. It's one of my favorite beers. Can you explain on how? Thank you again, Viceroy Kutli. Can you explain on how medicines and psychedelics get preserved to be found? How are they tested to find out it is the substances? Oh, that ergot tripping for 12. Ergot is a fungus, so that's not usually found. We do not usually find fungi. What we can find is seeds. So carbonized or dried out or mineralized or waterlogged plant remains. You might be able to find waterlogged fungi. I'm not actually sure. Fungi are so rare in the archaeological literature that I cannot think of any examples where I've read about a fungus that was ancient surviving. But plants survive in a variety of different ways. The most common one is when they are charred. So they're carbonized lightly enough not to burn to ash, but they still retain their form as a blackened seed. Usually the seed is what survives because it's the denser part. Like a leaf is just going to burn away. A stem or a stalk is just going to burn away. And so that's what we find. And then we can study them under microscopes to be able to identify their shape and their morphology to identify them to species. And so that's how we found things like cannabis or opium or other opium poppy, of course, or other plants like that, or other things that we think of as poisons. But if you watch my video on intoxicating substances in the Greco-magical papyri, they were also consuming poisons in low doses. Don't do this, please. I'm not encouraging anybody to consume a poisonous substance to get high, because you'll probably, and many of them in the past probably killed themselves too, but some of them also got high. So that's how we find this stuff. Another way is the residue. So if there's a pot that has an oil infused with something like opium or cannabis or whatnot, that residue might survive, the proteins from the residue might survive on the pot. And there have been examples of pots with opium residues, and maybe cannabis. I'm less sure about that one. I know of examples of opium for sure. So those are the two ways in which these kind of medicine, psychedelic type substances can survive, at least more commonly for archaeologists to find. And there's, I don't know, probably hundreds of publications at this point on intoxicating substances other than alcohol, whose residues or whose plant remains have been found at archaeological sites around the world. I mean, I've already made 2 videos in my series on ancient drugs. The one on the drugs in the ancient Greco-Roman magical papyri, and the one on the geological vapors at Delphi. I have more to make, as you can tell, because my undergraduate thesis was on this topic. I find it a fascinating topic. I also find it a topic that oftentimes is filled with misinformation from people who really are not portraying the evidence in an accurate way for the public. So it's something I will be talking about more. To get accurate information out there about narcotics in the ancient world. Okay, unless there's any more super thanks below, I think I'm going to call it. Thank you all. Yes, I will be on RM Brown. I saw that. I think we're doing a live stream on Monday. He'll get back to me. Maybe it'll be a recorded video. Otherwise, let me quickly share my lineup for next week again. So that people are aware, or including this week. Hopefully Friday, let me see, my phone's been buzzing, not the people I want. Hopefully Friday we'll have a live stream about the Herculaneum papyri. We'll have a video coming out on Sunday about ancient Roman genetics and DNA. It's a repeat of the live stream from Real Archaeology, but I don't think most people saw it, so I think it's worth profiling Dr. Hannah Moots again. And then Monday, I will either be recording or live streaming with RM Brown. Wednesday, I will have Hugh Thomas on to talk about Saudi Arabian archaeology. Friday, I'll have Kenny Fetter on to talk about frauds, myths, and Legends, his new book, updated book. And then the following week, I'll have Monica Hanna on to talk about the future of Egyptology, and Manveer Singh on to talk about shamanism. If you are a patron or a channel member, remember you can submit questions in advance. And this weekend, I will open up a Discord for my patrons so that we can start building more community and engaging more about archaeology and in the news and pseudo-archaeology elsewhere. And thank you all. And hi, my name is Flint, and I'm an archaeologist. Let's rock on. We got
rhymes and riddles, tickle, tickle, giggles, squiggle, jiggle, fiddle, Flint on tibble. Rhymes and riddles, tickle, tickle, giggles, squiggle, jiggle, fiddle, tibble, 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 tibble.
I still find it crazy to be dancing to the
Flint on tibble, 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 Flint on tibble.